They made Dennis Hopper Pimp Daddy Yo. What is it gonna be? Homie. Welcome back to Nonsense Reviews. My name is Brandon Ellis.
And I'm Justin.
Ellis, we're brothers. You don't have to hide it. It's okay. It's not. We're a gay couple in Texas. We could be open about this. We're brothers. And we are talking about a movie very near and dear to my heart, but probably for all the wrong reasons. We are talking about none other than The Crow, The Wicked Prayer.
We are told that when someone dies, the crow carries their soul to the land of the dead.
Halloween's coming up, and we need a spooky movie. There's horror movies, and then there's movies that are so bad, it scares you. So we're going to do the latter, and pick a movie that's kind of terrible. And the reason why I said this movie, The Crow, The Wicked Prayer, is so near and dear to my heart is I am a diehard fan of The Crow. The Crow, for those who are unacquainted, it's based on a comic book by James O'Barr. A person and his fiancée get brutally murdered by a gang. He comes back, gets resurrected by a crow, and is set out to seek revenge and murder each and every gang member. And that's the plot of the comic. It seems simple, but it's extremely emotional. It's riddled with pain. And the film that came out in 1994, starring Brandon Lee, was different, but still had a lot of emotions, a lot of grit.
So why are we not reviewing that one?
Because this is Nonsense Reviews. We got to talk about the zany, the ridiculous, the wacky, and the goofy. And honestly, The Crow is a fantastic movie, for as simple as a premise as it may come across. But it honestly does have some layers. The score is phenomenal. The cinematography is breathtaking. It may be a little dated, but it still really holds up. The dark atmosphere, the acting for sure, especially by Brandon Lee. It's definitely a great movie, worthy of being a cult classic. I mean...
So how does this compare to the movie we're going to be talking about?
Not at all.
Not at all.
There's no comparison. So more background here. So in 1996, they decide to make a sequel to The Crow, City of Angels, because the first one made money. And that movie, unfortunately, Brandon Lee, who played The Crow, died while filming, which adds a whole nother layer of tragedy to an otherwise tragic story. So we didn't have the lead actor to come back, so they just made a new Crow. They killed a new guy and brought him back.
Well, I mean, it could work under the terms of the story.
But it didn't. It really didn't. Now, that's the one sequel you haven't seen yet at the time of this recording. But I remember seeing it. I was very upset. I didn't like it. I thought they spit on the face of the source material. So the third movie, it was direct to DVD because the second movie tanked. Crow Salvation with Kirsten Dunst from Spider-Man fame. You already got some comic book points there, Crow Salvation. But actually, on the cover of the DVD, it says the best sequel of The Crow, which is not saying much.
Seeing that third movie, being that it was improved, raised my expectations for this fourth movie.
Yeah, because the second movie really disappointed me. The third movie was okay. It was pretty good. So this movie, I'm like, okay, it can't be as disappointing as the second movie, right? Was I wrong? Happy Halloween, folks. We got a scare for you. It's the name of Crow, The Wicked Prayer. Let's stop being around the bush. Let's get right into the nitty-gritty of what makes The Crow, The Wicked Prayer so special, why we're actually talking about it today. So it stars Edward Furlong as the Crow, but his name is Jimmy Cuervo. In the movie, Cuervo sounded like Crow, so I thought he was Jimmy Crow, and I thought they were being very on the nose about
too much
that.
credit to the filmmakers. No. They are on the nose with other things in this film, though, certainly. So
it also stars David Boreanaz from Angel fame and Buffy the Vampire and Bones. And he's now Luke Crash like the Bandicoot, or another name you can give him is Death. It's a poetic for what this movie makes me want to do with my life, which is not live. We also have Tara Reid as Lola, who is a blonde bimbo and sort of the love interest of David Boreanaz.
She is 100% a stereotype.
Yeah, we have Dennis Hopper. We'll get into his role just a little bit later. I'm very excited to talk about that.
Favorite part
I think
of
we're
the
very
movie.
excited to talk about that. And it also stars Danny Trejo. Yeah, before he was Boots for 5 seconds in the Dora film, he was in The Crow Wicked Prayer. Definitely, he's had many roles on television and film. I think this is his most memorable for one scene that we'll get into a little bit later. Let's talk about The Wicked Prayer and how it starts. Now, the original Crow films, the first 3 Crow films, even as bad as the second one can get, it had a dark color palette. It had a lot of hard rock, some grunge, some gothic music.
Really atmospheric.
Yeah, very
really set the
atmospheric,
tone.
very 90s.
Yeah.
Even though the third movie is set in the 2000s, still very 90s. This film replaces all of that with a very confusing sort of main plot of explaining how there is a lot of tension between these Mexican Native American people versus white people. Like, they're trying to build a casino and others aren't happy about that.
I give the movie some credit. They're trying to include some social issues that are current, maybe trying to bring in some new viewers to this brand. Well, it doesn't work out.
It's like a third grader trying to explain rocket science. I give them credit for trying, but Jesus Christ, they don't know anything. This is a very dumb movie. If you're gonna bring in race, you better be on some Black Panther levels. You better know what you're talking about. This is just terrible. And speaking of terrible, we have to talk about the music. As I said before, the other films, the first movie especially, had a very popular soundtrack with The Cure, 9 Inch Nails, Rage Against the Machine, Stone Temple Pilots. I can go on for days. Even the other films, the second one had a great soundtrack. The third one had a pretty good soundtrack. All rock music, all sort of dark. This movie, we throw that away because apparently it didn't work out. And now we have generic Native American free archive music.
It's the kind of music you would hear when you're like walking into like one of those Native American stores that's just copyright free.
Because there isn't a radio station, unfortunately, for that culture, so they just loop the same 2 songs. Unfortunately, this film decides to do just that. Replacement of the awesome rock music that we knew and loved from the Crow franchise.
We have to include diversity here to make it more hip with the young
If only
kids.
the music was more diverse, but I digress. So the film actually starts what's talking about the boring exposition of Native American Mexican people versus the white people, or something like that. I'm going to be very jumbled throughout this review because, honestly, I don't really know what I saw.
It's barely even a movie.
Yeah, I saw with my main co-host, Scott, who does a lot of the Nonsense News Nation, Nonsense Reviews with me, and he was very confused for his first time watching it. It was my third time watching it, and I was also very confused. We start off the film and introduce the main villains first. The main villains in the first movie were definitely iconic. They were irredeemable bad people. But you know what? They were fun. They were well acted, well executed. These people, the only thing that makes them stand out is their names. War, famine, pestilence, and death. The 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. This is reminding me of X-Men Apocalypse. So, yeah, you're not looking good, Wicked Prayer. I don't want to be reminded of X-Men Apocalypse. So it has like a Suicide Squad introduction to every character.
Pre-Suicide Squad.
Pre-Suicide Squad. So it has like the flashy name, pestilence, occupation, member of 4 horsemen, favorite food, deviled eggs. It has like that flashy animation, but it's very confused. And the whole movie, the movie doesn't have that style where it could go with the flashy fun.
The tone of the movie is all over the place. It's not consistent whatsoever. And I think the filmmakers were either high or drunk when they were editing this film. There was no direction whatsoever, let alone the acting choices of some of these actors.
Definitely drunk, from my opinion, because alcohol is a depressant, and You gotta be depressed after making a film like this. So anyway, we have a horrible reminder to Suicide Squad that will come out a decade later. You have David Boreanaz as the lead, who is Death, and also Luke Crash. But let's just call him Angel for this review. He's been on Buffy the Vampire Slayer and then the spin-off Angel, which is some of my favorite television shows of all time, where he plays a vampire with a soul, and he has to redeem himself. It's very deep, and his bad side is Angelus. Pretty much this role is sort of like a very cheesy version of Angelus, the vampire without a soul. I know. I just love the show so much. I think he just
wanted to get a paycheck, and he just phoned it in.
So Angel in 2004 ended on one of the biggest cliffhangers in all of television. What is Angel doing now? A year later, instead of making that an awesome, epic season to Angel, we have him in the Crow Wicked Prayer.
Obviously, he was desperate for some money.
Come on, Angel was paying the bills. I disagree. But yeah, he was there. And we have the villains. Let's go into the protagonist. It's called the Crow for a reason. How is our Crow? It's Jimmy Cuervo. And, of course, he has a love interest. Because, spoilers, they gotta die. He has to come back and be angsty and go to Hot Topic and paint his face. That's how it is. The romance is terrible. It's very shoehorned in because it's a Crow movie. You gotta check off the list. Alright. He's in love. Alright. Gang violence. Okay, comes back from the dead. Okay, kills them. It's a checklist that they're going through in a very bland way. When they do try, it's interesting. We'll get into that. So, terrible romance. The lead, who is Edward Furlong, he looks like a combination of Elijah Wood sometimes and Norman Reedus.
What an odd combination.
Yeah, so sometimes you have like those big Elijah Wood, Frodo Baggin eyes. Oh, I love you. He's talking to his lover. I think it's Lily. I'm forgetting. I don't really care. And then other times when he's angry, he's scowly. He looks like Daryl from The Walking Dead, Norman Reedus. He's like, all right, man, I'm going to kill you.
Again, this confusing tone.
He goes from Sam to Rick. Where are you, Rick? Just from his face. It's very odd. It's just what he looks like. Now we'll introduce you to one of the highlights. Danny Trejo is the father of Frodo Baggins' love interest. And if you're going to have a dad, it better be either Morgan Freeman or Danny Trejo. Luckily, the film for some reason had the budget to get Danny Trejo.
That's where they spent all their money, and man, it's well worth it because I loved his performance. Now, I'm not saying his acting was great because it was not, but he made the movie for me. His scenes were unforgettable.
Oh, one scene in particular. But honestly, Justin, I may disagree just a little bit because there are points where his acting is decent. I'm not saying he's getting a nomination for the Crow Wicked Prayer at the Oscars, but it wasn't half bad. Like when he wanted to emote, you felt it. But like it's funny because he has like a little posse that just follows him around because he's the leader of the community.
I think the difference here is that he is just trying just a little bit compared to the other actors who clearly had no direction and were one-dimensional characters, whereas at least he tried.
Danny Trejo, he's like, oh, I'm so sad. And then like the gang's like, yes, sad. Danny Trejo, we love you. They're just his fans, following him. So a lot of funny stuff with that. You also are introduced to the love interest's brother, who is a cop. Then we get to the meat potatoes of the Crow story, the murder scene. Angel and his crew, they come, and just about when Frodo Baggins and his lover are about to get, I think, hitched, it's not explained very well in the movie, they brutally kill them. The bimbo, Tara Reid, rips Lily's eyes out. They hang Frodo. It seems very, very scary, very graphic, but it's not. In a better movie like the original, maybe it would be more meaningful, but not really. And the reason why Angel is killing these people is because she is the daughter of Danny Trejo. He wants revenge on Danny Trejo and the Native American Mexican people for some reason. I don't know why. It's not
Nothing
explained.
is really explained.
I'm really trying to make sense of nonsense, which goes
motivation.
against nonsense reviews. I apologize, people. What would you do, logically, Justin, if you brutally murdered someone? What would you do right afterwards? Go to Disney World, what would you do?
I would probably go on the run. Try to hide the evidence. I don't know.
That sounds like a murderer who's ashamed of their work. These murderers were very proud. They are the four horsemen of the apocalypse, of course. So they're going to celebrate. And there's a scene where they have a little party. And Angel, he brings out devil's eggs, devil food cake, and more devil-themed items.
Eat up! Partake in the deviled ham, eat of the deviled eggs, and for dessert, feast on devil's food cake.
So let me tell you, Angel, I love, again, I must reiterate, I love your show, but, just because these food items have the word devil in them, it doesn't mean necessarily that they have satanic properties.
I did not know that deviled eggs can summon Satan.
Well, that's what they actually want to do. They want to make Angelus the Antichrist.
By eating deviled eggs.
It's step one. It's definitely a process. You got to digest that, then have the deviled cake for food cake for dessert. It's a process, and then they party, and the animation of the party, the editing is so flashy and terrible. It's hilarious. So that's where the nonsense part comes in. It's very over the top. I couldn't tell if they were being high or the editing was bad, or it was probably a combination of both. Jimmy Cuervo, Frodo Baggins, comes back from the dead. He pops out of the refrigerator that they stuffed him into. And one of the four horsemen is like, when they're about to bury them, they're just like, oh, that's the fridge I grew up in when my parents put me in.
That's the freezer Mama used to lock me up in. She'd say it's damnation in there. You ain't never coming out.
I'm like, wow, that's something it's a throwaway line you're just gonna throw at us? Not explained. So he jumps out of the fridge. He has an emotional scene. It actually isn't that bad. His Frodo eyes come out as opposed to his Norman Reedus eyes. And he comes to his broken down RV that he lives in. And his dog's there. And he starts burning it down. I really hope the dog came out. Really, as a dog person, I hope he got a stick, said fetch, and then burned down the place when the dog was safely away. But, well, we don't know. I don't think we see it. He sees pictures of his girlfriend, and then he uses a Sharpie and does the typical Crow black lines on his face.
Yeah, they really ran out of money on this one.
Yeah, they didn't have paint or anything. They couldn't afford
what
that.
Next,
so
crayons?
Now they had a Sharpie. Next, he'd just get some dark poop, and that'd be a Crow 5 if they made it. They would just use that. And then you see him actually have makeup after that. So it's a burning RV. How many minutes do you have to apply makeup? It's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, boom. I don't know how he had the time to apply the makeup, but he did. And then we get the Crow, the typical Crow stuff. And we get the first kill. He goes to one of the dudes at a bar and kills him with a bug zapper. And that's a pretty interesting concept, but that's coming from this movie, so it's not executed well at all. We get one of our biggest problems. Like, even if the story's bad, maybe the fighting's good. It's very choppy, it's very all over the place, you don't see anything that's going on, and it's very flashy. Not in the good way. Not like Scott Pilgrim. If you can't do that right, hopefully Dennis Hopper will be good when we get to him. We have what he's up to. What are the villains up to? They actually are at some sort of wedding, and they're trying to find a virgin to get the sacrifice. So they go to the virgin bride, but it turns out, she's pregnant. She's not actually a virgin.
Wow, plot twist.
Yeah, but that was actually kind of funny though. They find a virgin, but it's like a 30-year-old black dude. And later in the movie they go like, "You're the virgin?" He's just like, "Yeah, I guess I was just trying to save myself for the one." Well, let me tell you, sir, you are in the Crow wicked prayer. No one's gonna want to date you. I know you're proud of that and put it on your resume. It's your only line of work, but you're not scoring any poontang from that. I apologize, sir. So the priest, they shoot him, and it's very dramatic. It's very sad because this is a movie low-key about God, and they shoot a messenger of God, and it's sad. Well, that's what they want you to think. We don't really care here. So next we get to the second kill of the film, which I think he just kind of slaps the other dude, and they're at like this party place. It's Frodo Baggins and Angel and his posse, and it looks like they're at a prom.
They probably filmed it at some high schoolers' prom.
Yeah, not even like a fancy senior prom. It's one of those
like junior high.
janky junior high proms at a middle school. Back when like the kids are awkward and they still believe that girls and boys have cooties. That's probably why people weren't there. They were just hiding in the corners of the building. And yeah, so the second kill is very disappointing at the prom, the middle school prom. And the villains after that, what's left of the villains, they go back to a church to marry the bimbo and Angel. But the church is also a brothel.
Isn't that convenient?
It is convenient because we get the best performance of the film.
Oscar.
Dennis Hopper.
This is Oscar-winning material.
So, Dennis Hopper, he's not a pastor. Well, not the normal definition of a pastor. He's a pimp daddy. They made Dennis Hopper, who is just like an average white dude, probably in his 50s to 60s in the time of the filming. Maybe in his 50s. And he's this pimp daddy, yo. What is it gonna be? Homie.
And what's it gonna be? Homie? You wanna be Satan or what?
He puts homie at the end. Like, sometimes he forgets to say homie. Just like, oh, it gotta be cool. Homie. Like he's Marge Simpson
like
trying
this,
to be cool.
This weird
right,
old white
homie.
dude that is not connected with anything, trying to be a gangster, and it comes off horrible, but I love it.
Yeah, it's definitely the best part of the film. And outside of the church brothel, when Angel and the bimbo are trying to get married, the Crow, Frodo Baggins, has a fight with the one of the last dudes of the apocalypse or whatever, and he has like TNT attached to him, so the fight's not going to go very far. And they're fighting each other, but then Danny Trejo and his crew come, and they want to shoot the Frodo Baggins because they think he's bad, but they're also going to shoot the TNT guy. So they, for some reason, the TNT guy works together with him and blows himself up for the good of, for being a good person. Like he said, it's better to die a hero.
Better to die a hero at night than to wake a coward in the morning.
I'm like, dude, you've been a villain this whole time.
Look at that character.
It's so confusing. It's really confusing. So that's the boring stuff. Back to the good part.
We're kicking our homie down. Our hardcore banger Luke G here. And he'll be your homie.
Hurry up! Make me the Antichrist!
I now pronounce you devil and his shorty.
So Angel and the bimbo get married, and Dennis Hopper has a performance very similar to Tommy Wiseau from The Room.
I did not hit her. I did not. Oh, hi, Mark.
Which is a notoriously bad film. Now, I'm going to keep it PG, so I'll censor. He goes, "Kiss the bride, mother effer! Kiss the bride!"
Oh, kiss the bride!
Like that was his genuine acting. It was hilarious. And then Angel becomes, presumably, the Antichrist.
How do we notice his transformation in the movie, by the way?
Because two things. Number one, Dennis Hopper asks if it's him, if it's the real Antichrist, in the funniest way possible.
Is it really you? Original gangsta? Well, wicked props to you, Mr. OG. And thanks for representing all the homeboys.
I've watched this film
3 times.
3 times, and I still question what he meant by calling him the original gangster. But it's really funny. And we also know that he's Antichrist because sometimes his voice changes. There's like one hilarious scene where he's talking to Frodo Baggins and goes, "Time to take out my vengeance on," and his voice changes. God.
Let's get this party started, shall we? By taking out my vengeance on
God.
Like, and this wasn't even like editing, I believe. I think that he was just like saying this as an actor.
He just had something in his throat that time. No, I think they edited it and it's really bad. But they only do it like maybe 3 times very subtly. So like there's no point. He still sounds like Angelus from Angel and Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So it's kind of pointless. Sadly, it's the closest thing we'll get to Angel Season 6, everyone. I'm sorry, Buffy fans and Joss Whedon fans. It's it. And they figure out, oh, this is earlier on in the film, that shooting the crow that flies with the crow is a source for his power. So they shoot the crow, and so Frodo Baggins is fairly mortal. So if you kill him, he's actually dead. He's not invincible like he would normally be. We're gonna get this fight between Angelus and the crow. But how could he fight if he's weakened from the actual bird being injured? This is where Danny Trejo comes in and single-handedly saves the film. He takes the crow, and his gang's like, you gotta do this, do the dance and the prophecy. But then he goes, but I'll look like a fool. And then it's like, just freaking do it.
Billy believed in the old stories, like the crow dance. They'll think I was a fool. They already do.
And he's like, okay. We don't know what to expect. Maybe he's gonna do the cha-cha slide or the Macarena. No. He takes off his shirt.
Yep.
Shows his all of his glorious
Man
boobs, his tatas, his fatty folds, and his many tattoos, and he starts dancing and jiggling, and
with the Native American
music. It's not like
music.
Stone Temple Pilots, something you could jam to. It's just like and you could tell that they're chanting, but it's muted, so it's just like his mouth is just open, like
and it's in slow motion,
and like he's really getting into it. It's really funny, but then you see his posse dancing with him, and they have like the most awkward faces. Like you could tell this was for a paycheck. I think Danny Trejo was probably a dance he was proud of, maybe, but like these people are just like, okay, they started to question their involvement in the film at that point. So we get to the actual fight, and before the fight, Angelus and the bimbo are driving to the cemetery where they have to go to complete the ritual. And he starts freaking out and talking French and Chinese. Like, he's freaking out.
Paris? Rio? Carnival. Beijing?
And all they have to do is have sex. Which, if you look at Tara Reid, is pretty easy to do. And Angel's a pretty attractive guy. So, should be done. He should finish in like a minute 30, gauging how attractive these two people are. So they're at this cemetery, about to bang. Then Frodo Baggins comes, and they have this terrible fight where he starts jumping around, probably with a wire attached to him, because it looks terrible. And there's one scene where he's talking to them, trying to mess with them, and he wiggles his fingers, and he says something magical, and then like there's a little twinkle sound effect,
like a Disney movie,
a Disney like a Tinkerbell.
So God gave trash like you wings.
It comes out of nowhere, and it just shows how uneven this movie is. How they just throw things in and they don't really stick with it. So it's, at some points it's trying to be charming and funny. Other times it's trying to be serious. Other times it's trying to rip off the crow. I don't know. So of course, Frodo Baggins wins. He won Lord of the Rings, so he's gonna win in The Crow. He kills Angel. That's why there's no other season of Angel. That's the reason why. And Danny Trejo and his cop son come, and they arrest Tara Reid. She doesn't die. Everyone else died. She was responsible for murdering Danny Trejo's daughter, but still, she gets spared because sexism. 2005 was a very different time, Justin. The very last scene, the crow, Frodo Baggins gets reunited with Lily in presumably heaven, and it's supposed to be very satisfying, but at this point you just want it to end.
I was just happy the movie was over.
Yeah, and the credits finally roll. It's more Native American music. They just had so much Native American music that they wanted to show to the world. And that is The Crow, Wicked Prayer. I went over there pretty much the entire film. And Justin, I know you haven't seen it in a while, but what are your final thoughts of the film?
Honestly, this movie felt like a very nice fan film. It felt like almost a parody, something that could not live up to The Crow's name, but it had some entertaining value nonetheless as a parody. And I will say that I love this movie, ironically, of course. So and it definitely has the nonsense seal of approval from me.
That was what I was about to ask you. Okay, so here's my actual opinion. I've seen this movie 3 times. Every time, I've been extremely confused. every time I was just very bored. I'm sad to say that this film tanks, but there are some hilarious moments, specifically with Danny Trejo, with Dennis Hopper, with Angel. So is some fun to be had. So those parts, don't get me wrong, are amazing and would get the Nonsense seal of approval, without a doubt. But the film as a whole package, just because it's such a slog to get through, I can't say it gets the Nonsense seal of approval from me. But I love Dennis Hopper as El Nino. For some reason, he's a white dude. He gets the name El Nino.
I wish we can all get that name.
Yeah.
El Nino.
Well, our last name is Ellis, so that's the closest thing we'll get. We got our L's too, Mr. Hopper. So anyway, that was Nonsense Reviews. If you want to see more of us or hear more of us, because this is a podcast, you could find us on SoundCloud, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Anchor, and oh my god, so many more places. We'll be back on WGBB AM radio on November 9th, so look forward to that. Justin, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, I've been Brandon Ellis.
And I'm Justin Ellis.
And this was Nonsense Reviews, signing off.